Welcome to Gold Derby. I'm Denton Davidson here with PGA Awards nominee Jen Statsky, co-creator, executive producer, and writer of Hacks. And Jen, I'm going to start right off about, what was it that inspired this series for you? It's a comedy about comedy. So how did that all begin for you in wanting to tell the story of a stand-up?
Yeah, I think that we really kind of were drawn to the idea of telling the story of a stand-up, but specifically the story of a woman in the arts who had been underappreciated, who had for years and years been hitting the pavement, pounding the pavement, working away. And while maybe other like of her peers got more recognition, she kind of wasn't given that same sort of acclaim and reverence. And we became really interested in telling a woman like that story because there are so many women like that. When you look at, like I said, the arts and just, industries at large, it has been a markedly harder path for women in that way. And so we just really wanted to honor that type of story. And of course, her being a stand-up gave us the ability to have this character be super funny, but also tell really grounded stories, which is kind of where the tone of the show finds its sweet spot.
And there's pressure for it to be funny but there's also a lot of drama and playfulness in the series. And I mean, I can't think of a better actress to hit all those notes than Jean Smart, but she's not a stand-up comedian. She's not in her 20s. She's not in her 30s. I'm curious if there was initially pushback for you as a team from the studios or anyone else in just getting this made in the first place.
Mm-hmm. I mean, the answer is no. The answer is that our partners at Universal and HBO Max like really understood from the get-go like what we were going for, and that we wanted this to be both comedic and dramatic in its tone. That was always kind of the goal. We pitched the show as a dark comedy. And so really what that meant was that then when the very important moment where we had to cast Deborah Vance came about, we needed an actor who was emblematic of that tone, someone who could be both so incredibly funny, but also play the drama and the more dramatic storylines. And, when you make a list of who can do that, Jean Smart is at the very top. She is so gifted on both sides of the coin. It's really quite incredible. And so we knew if we could get her, that the tone of the show would be very clear, that it was both funny, but also grounded in more dramatic moments. And so there was, I have to say, HBO Max, they really knew the kind of show we wanted to make. And then once we got Jean, it was like it became even more crystal clear of exactly what the tone and what it was going to be.
And then complementing Jean, you have Hannah Einbinder, who plays Ava. And, the respect these characters have for each other is one thing. And then the humor comes from, how much they aggravate each other and just continue to push each other's buttons. What's your process in terms of the work you do to build the arc of these characters and their relationship over a season?
Right. I mean, that was a super important part for us of arcing out that first season, because it's very much so they butt heads at first. Neither of them wants to be in the position they're in. Neither of them wants to admit that they need each other. And yet we see as the season develops that they very much so do need each other, and they kind of crack each other open and find themselves making each other better. And so that, by design was very carefully plotted that would, the arc of their relationship would be, what you're hooked into season one. And yeah, we just got so lucky with Hannah, because the truth is the show doesn't work if you have someone as amazing and incredible as Jean, and then the person acting across from her is not holding their own. And so it's a testament to Hannah that someone who has, really not much experience acting was able to just like knock it out of the park that way. And exactly what you're saying, like make that relationship really believable, make it something you can invest in. And yeah, we really lucked out with her.
And with the new series, you never really know if it's going to take. You don't know what's going to happen once it hits airwaves. So what's this journey been like for you to win your first Emmy and to see Jean win an Emmy for this? I mean, it's been an incredible run.
Yeah, it's been really cool to to me understatement. it's just so lovely. Like you said, you just never know if something's going to hit. And when you're making it and you're in the writer's room and you're on set and you're in the edit, you're like, I think this is good. This is something I would watch. I like it, but you just never know. And you certainly never know now that there's 14 billion TV shows out there. So I think we just feel both like, that it was a lot of hard work and a lot of dedication that our cast and crew put in, especially making the show during, the depths of COVID. But then also we just feel really lucky that when it came out, people did connect with it in the way they did.
And television has changed so much over the years. Back in the day, it used to be the norm, especially for comedies, to have 20 or 25 episodes in a season, and you hope to hit 100 so you can get rerun money. And now it's so much different. So with the way things are now, what is the benefit for you as a producer, in the way you're able to tell stories and the way you're able to have a comedy like this with a longer arc? I mean, it's very different than Designing Women, which was
Right.
Smart was in 30 years ago.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's really interesting because even in my, I've been working professionally in TV for like 10, 11 years. And even in that just span, it has changed so much. Like I started on Parks and Recreation and same, like we did 22 episodes and it's a crazy grind. I would say that creatively, what I love about the fact that we've kind of evolved to this 8, 10, 12 episode model is, yes, it's there's a more of an appetite for serialized storylines, but also it allows you to be more ambitious in the types of stories you can do. Often if you're doing 22 episodes and so much of it is on stage and you're in your kind of standing sets, and that's all great, but you're not going on location much. You're not doing you're not stepping outside the pre-existing sets as much. And for us, for Hacks, something that our, Lucia and Yellow, who directed the pilot, and our cinematographer, Adam Bricker, like they have such an elevated style and look for the show. And we get to shoot in these like really beautiful locations all over LA and Vegas and some other places we've gotten to go this season. And that's just something that, in my experience back and working 22 episodes, more network comedy, you're just, it's not, the opportunity to do that isn't there as much. So I think creatively, the opportunity to just like really go to different locations and make the show look so elevated is such a wonderful gift that I really enjoy being able to do.
And in terms of being a producer, because you wear so many hats on this show, what do you consider the most important elements of making a show a success from a producer's standpoint?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think that, I think juggling like the business aspect of it with the human aspect is a challenge. Like, it's an incredibly ambitious show. We're shooting all over. We block shoot, which means that every single script, like we're shooting scenes from episode 1 and scenes from episode 6 and scenes from episode 8, and it's just such a intense schedule. So I think it's managing that schedule, but also making sure that, first and foremost, you're, especially during COVID, your cast and crew is safe and healthy and everyone is feeling respected that way. And so I think as a producer, you're weighing the creative but also the business aspect of it, of like, well, creatively that's best, money wise that's best, and then also the other part of it is like, these are people you care about and they're human beings and you want to do right by them and make sure everyone is treated well. And so I think it's just like a constant balancing of all those things that you're trying to do as a producer.
And I'm always just curious, what's the relationship with you and, is it Lucia Aniello and Paul Downs, your co-creators?
Yeah.
How far back does that relationship go? I mean, how did this friendship form?
It goes back a while. Yeah, we all came up doing comedy in New York City at the Upright Citizens Brigade, started by Amy Poehler, which I'm sure people are familiar with. And so, yeah, we met doing, sketch comedy there in like 2008, I want to say. So we have been friends and collaborators for a long, long time. And that's been one of, the greatest joys about the show, is that on screen, this is a depiction of like a fruitful, creative collaboration. And hopefully part of the reason why people connect to it and maybe it feels authentic is that's also the story off screen, is that it is very much so a joy for us to get to work, the three of us, and collaborate and create this thing together. And to a larger extent, that's making television in general. It's such a collaborative medium. It takes an entire cast and crew of people who are all working together towards a common goal. And so, yeah, it's been this has been such an honor and a privilege, this whole experience in general. And then to get to do it with two of my best friends is like icing on the cake.
Well, Jen, PGA Award nominee, congratulations on everything. And thanks for sitting down and chatting with us today about your work on Hacks, and best of luck.
Thanks for having me.
Welcome to Gold Derby. I'm Denton Davidson here with PGA Awards nominee Bruce Miller, creator, executive producer, and showrunner of The Handmaid's Tale. And Bruce, what has been the process of taking Margaret Atwood's incredible book and not only bringing it to life, but then you've now extended it out for 4 seasons, and it just continues to tell more and more of the story of this world of Gilead and this regime that treats women as property. What's that process of continuing that story?
Well, I think the process is very much the process you said, which is sticking with Margaret Atwood and sticking with her story. As long as you're extending out from what is a really well thought through, strong foundation of a world, it makes it a lot easier. And luckily, very fortunately, Margaret's been around for the whole process, and we've been able to talk about just extensions of the things that she mentioned in the book, extensions of that world. So I think we're very much still making The Handmaid's Tale and making Margaret Atwood's book into a television show. We've just been able to kind of dig around in some edges you don't get time to in a novel.
How much communication do you get with Margaret? I mean, is she pretty vocal if she doesn't like something, or has she been thumbs up the whole way through?
Well, she's certainly vocal about positive and negative things. I've been very lucky. I mean, I know, the bulk of people who adapt a book don't have any contact with the author, and if they do, it's sometimes negative. But oftentimes when you're adapting what was a classic, the author is long gone, so you don't have anybody to talk to at all. So in terms of me just having a resource of someone to talk to, her available time is never enough for me. I would just, as she's busier than you and I put together. So I think that I love her to be involved, and we do talk, as often as we can. And I think that we try to kind of talk about the season all the way through the season, as we're making it, as we're writing it, as we're talking about it. So it isn't one big conversation. But I think, Margaret is in all ways, a producer on the project. She acts as a producer. She gets the material that a producer does. She chimes in as a producer. So anyway, it's we're very lucky to have Margaret, and very lucky that Margaret is an expert at having her work adapted. I'm adapting The Handmaid's Tale. The Handmaid's Tale's already been an opera, a play, a movie. So in some ways, I'm way behind her. She's so much more facile in saying this works, this doesn't work. She's seen it a bunch of times. So I think that in that way, it's a unique situation. You have someone who is such a famous writer, such an influential writer, such someone who's really wrote a classic and is still around writing things. And they also are very comfortable with it being adapted by another person. So that combination, which is, all decisions Margaret made, and I'm very grateful that she kind of embraced both the process of kind of continuing to let me, bother her with questions that she never had to think about. Also with the idea of always having someone she can come to and say, well, that doesn't make any sense to me. But in terms of when people don't like things, it's almost always things you kind of haven't figured out a way to make work either. It's not like, you and I read a script and you love something and I hate it. It's much more like we both see the same thing and we're trying to work through it together.
One of the things I find so fascinating about this series is that how much you can hate a character in one moment and then all of a sudden feel bad for them in the next, particularly someone like Serena, even Aunt Lydia. Sometimes you're like, does she need a hug? So I'm just curious about, how are you able to sort of round these characters out who do such awful things, but the viewer still has some sort of empathy for them?
Well, I think it's, first of all, it's just point of view, looking at their point of view and making sure that they're not bad people in their own minds. And so how are they justifying it? And don't make it kind of, to them, it doesn't feel like justifying. To them, it feels like the actual reason. So I think a lot of it is both having a sense of characters that were created in a novel, so you get a little bit more into their head, and also just our actors, Yvonne Strahovski, Joseph Fiennes, play people who do reprehensible things, and certainly both of those actors kind of despise their characters' actions. But I think that because you have those actors who are able to find not only the lie that the person is telling themselves to justify it, but to forget that it's a lie, to find a way to make it true to them. That is really, so it's so much more them than me. It's so much more, we dig around, but they are the people who deliver a full performance. And it's funny that you say, oh, there's these characters you hate who do such terrible things, but you feel sympathy for them. They don't, our main character tore a man to pieces at the end of both the end of the season and the end of the pilot, if you remember.
Yeah.
And no one thinks of her as someone terrible who you feel empathy for. I mean, she does terrible things as well. I mean, it's just that I think it's all about how you couch it in that weird moral universe of Gilead.
And as you're moving the series along, I mean, is it draining to go home and think, how can I make these people's lives miserable? I mean, it's and I don't really mean that as a joke. I mean, it has to be sort of sucking the energy out of you to some degree of how do you keep creating these terrible things?
Well, it is draining, and it's more draining during these times when you feel like stuff you're writing is then reflected 6 months later in the real world, which is a terrible feeling because you're trying to come up with, as you said, the worst things you can imagine. And then when someone says, ha ha ha, it happened, you're like, no, that's not funny. I was really trying to come up with something terrible. I think a lot of it, the way that you deal with it is by the incredible good grace and professionalism of our cast and crew and staff, writing staff, that it isn't about, it's about entertainment, and it's about telling a good story, and it's about telling these character stories, and the things that happen to them that knock them down, we're thinking about how do they endure those, not how do we inflict those. So it's much more for us a story about endurance and heroics, and basically I always put myself in the position of June as what would I do, and June is so tough and so inspiring and so strong and also so committed to the people she loves in her life that I think that's the inspiring part. So I always look at that rather than, it's kind of like the whatever the hardship is, you just look at it as a lens to focus the kind of heroics of the character.
And what is that partnership with Elizabeth Moss like? I mean, what a powerhouse actress, obviously. And can you talk about just collaborating with her, and not just because she's a star, but she's also a co-producer and she's directing a lot of episodes now. So what's that partnership like?
I am extraordinarily lucky to be partnered with Lizzie, and we didn't know each other coming into this project, except I knew her career, and she had not directed when she came into this project, and I don't think she had been a producer yet. She's a producer in every respect, not just in name only. She is an executive producer on the show, and she's worked her way up over the seasons. But it is she's as remarkable kind of as a talent as you would imagine, as thoughtful and generous, and the way she is, you get that performance by being someone who everybody can work with and be their best, and that's what she does. Just creates a very calm environment that translates to how she produces, how she's remarkably funny and not disappears into her characters and has a terrible mouth and all these kinds of things. So she's a wonderful colleague. She's worked in television for a very long time and worked on many long-standing series. So she really knows how to be a colleague on a TV show. But creatively, she's invested trust in me and had kind of opened herself up as an artist to me in ways that I cannot, appreciate enough. And it's been lovely to see her both want to direct, and when she came to me and said, I'm really interested in directing. I was like, well, I've been waiting since day 2, but it's nice of you to come. Because she waits till she's ready and she moves into it. But it's hard for me to say. Over the last year and a half during COVID, especially, we've worked together so closely that I adore her as a friend and a colleague more than I can express to you. I mean, just respect her more. And the whole cast has been such professionals. But Lizzie, I mean, our working relationship and our creative relationship couldn't be any closer. And I just feel incredibly lucky. You don't get that very often, and to get it with someone who also, I can write the stuff that's the hardest for me to write, and she can still do it. That's fun, because then I'm like, ooh, what if I write this? And so that part is really fun. Is she also, in addition to just being a spectacular, brilliant person and a good egg, is also just a great actress. So you can really play with that too. And she loves doing it, and I love pushing her. So.
Well, Bruce, it's a partnership we're grateful for, and congratulations on all the accolades that The Handmaid's Tale has received and continues to receive. Good luck with the PGA Awards nomination coming up, and thank you for sitting down and speaking with us about The Handmaid's Tale.
Thank you very much for having me. It was my pleasure.
Welcome to Gold Derby. I'm Denton Davidson, here with PGA Awards nominee Mark Roybel, executive producer of Mare of Easttown. And Mark, this is a murder mystery. It's gritty, but one of the things I love about this series is that it's also so relatable. It's a small town. People like me from the town I grew up in can relate to this. And I think that's why it's been such a huge success. What did you respond to when you initially read this script, and what made you want to jump on board as a producer?
Mare, the character of Mare. Quite simply. So Brad had sent me the script and the pilot, and I read it overnight, and I just responded to the character of Mare. She was tough, but she was also incredibly injured. And by the end of the pilot, I didn't know what was going to happen to her, but all I knew was that I wanted to know if she was going to be okay. I wanted to know if this town was going to be okay, and everything I knew, and I thought everything was resting on her. If she's gonna survive, if she's gonna figure out what's gonna happen to this case, and it just felt like life or death stakes. And if she was going to be okay. And I just thought, what an unbelievable role, and everything just rested on her. And that was just the mark of great storytelling in just such an economic, 60 pages. And I just thought, man, what an unbelievable character. And I just thought, how can I be a part of this? So it was all about Mare.
So you team up with Brad Inglesby, and then the next thing is, who is Mare? And so how did you get Kate Winslet? I mean, who's so fantastic in this role? How did that whole process happen? Not just Kate, but really this whole cast. How was that process for you?
Well, I got to say, we were pretty blessed. I mean, looking back on it, we were really lucky. So Brad wrote the pilot, and at the time, Sharp Objects was on the air at HBO and was doing incredibly well. And that also was about a woman going to a small town looking into a murder. A very a trope that is fairly typical. And I thought, well, I said to Brad, look, we probably need to distinguish ourselves. We're going to go out to the market. What about writing a second script? And he said, yeah, no problem. So he wrote a second script within a month, and he basically wrote a second script. He put it. He gave it to me, and we basically talked about who would be a perfect person. And top of the list, I mean, like, no question, who can handle the complexity, who can handle the depth of character, and handle the themes, and just knowing where it was going to go. And we thought Kate Winslet, and Brad thought, could we really get her? Is she really going to want to go back to television? Is she going to really, isn't she going to have all these movies? And we just said, well, why don't we try it? And sure enough, we sent her the two scripts, and within, I would say, a week, she basically said yes, and she didn't let go. She just said yes, didn't know where it was going to go, didn't know what the ending was. She committed, and that was that.
And the limited series on television has really changed over the years. I mean, it used to be rare, like way back in the day, and now it's really a new way to elongate a story and get deeper into the characters. What about the limited series for you as a producer is appealing in terms of being able to wrap your hands around that content?
Well, as a limited series, I came from features, and the kinds of features that I wanted, that I was making, they were very character driven. They were literary adaptations, and I felt like those kinds of movies, they were getting squeezed out at the time in 2016, 2017. I thought, well, where are those movies getting made? They were moving towards limited series, right? And I thought, well, because there was a time when the marketplace was really supporting kind of bigger global movies that had global IP, that could have bigger audiences, and so the kind of character driven, heavier themes, things where you could spend stories where you can spend a lot more time with characters, that was moving towards television, where you could spend more hours. And so that's when I jumped into television, and I just thought, the limited series is where movies, I think that were movies that I wanted to make. Those were the stories that I wanted to make, and that was kind of a natural transition for me. And so I think for the last couple of years, that's where I think you could see that the kinds of movies that the indies and the kind of the indies that we were seeing in movie theaters, that's where it's kind of gone. That's where I think it's kind of gone, and that's where there's been a lot of big appetite, and that's why I feel like you can see a lot of great material, literary material, original ideas, auteur-driven stuff, and of course, great talent like Kate kind of gravitating to.
Yeah, we see, I mean, not just Kate Winslet. I mean, there's many Oscar winners that are gravitating towards limited series on television. So the quality of TV is certainly not lacking. And the cast on this has so much chemistry, and it's not just about Kate Winslet. What was the experience like when you got to the Emmys and you had all of that praise showered on you, and then Kate wins, and Julianne Nicholson wins, and Evan Peters wins, and Jean lost her own castmate, and she won another Emmy anyway for Hacks. So everyone's a winner. So what was that Emmy night like for you when there was so much love shown to the show?
I mean, it's an embarrassment of riches. We were just so lucky, to be honest. We're so proud of them, and so well deserved. I mean, just unbelievable performances, and we were quite surprised, of course, but just so happy for our whole cast. And to be honest, it was such a difficult shoot, going through COVID and having to stop, and being one of the first productions to resume production. So to be recognized, for them to be recognized by their peers and by the Academy for their performance, and for the show to resonate, I just felt like, God, they were so thrilled, and we were so thrilled for them. It couldn't have been a better moment for them, and we were so thrilled. I don't know. I know Brad and I were just jumping for joy when that first award went out. We couldn't believe it. It was such a long journey, and it was our first show for Brad and myself. It was our first television show. So for us to be there jumping up in joy and hugging each other and yelling, Julianne's name, it was like a dream. It was, I don't know. I think we probably lost our voice that night. Yeah.
And for you as an executive producer,
Yeah.
what's the most important thing for you, or what are the most important elements in your mind to make sure something's a success, or to get it moving the way you want it to?
I think for me, it's, it always comes down to the material, right? It comes down to the script. And I think everybody on this panel will say that it always comes down to are we telling a great story? Is it an original story? Is it something that has integrity? Is it something that we believe in? And whether it's a comedy or if it's drama, something we believe in is something that we support. And when it came across Brad's story, I just thought it's going to tell so many ideas here, and so many themes and so many things that I believe in. It's a worldview that I subscribe to, and for me, it's can I bring something to it as an executive producer? Can I do I share not only that worldview, but can I bring in my additive to it? Can I just I don't want to just be an executive producer by name, but can I bring my worldview, my point of view, my experience? Can I add something to it to help bring it further down the road? Can I do something that'll get it closer to production, or make it a little better, or help the creator get it made? That's where I feel like as an executive producer, I bring value or help get it made. That's my role. That's all I can do.
Well, Mark Roybel, congratulations on Mare of Easttown and your PGA Awards nomination. Good luck, and thank you so much for sitting down and chatting with us today.
Thanks. Really enjoyed it. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Welcome to Gold Derby. I'm Denton Davidson here with PGA Awards nominee Mimi Leader, executive producer and director of The Morning Show. Mimi, what is it about morning shows in this world of news personalities and behind the scenes drama that intrigued you to make this series and collaborate with your team and become so dedicated to telling this story?
Well, a lot of questions there. I've always been fascinated with behind the scenes of films and television shows, Larry Sanders. And I love the idea of what, newscasters and people who are celebrities and public figures look like to the public. And then behind the scenes, the complexity of their real lives very much mirror, very high stakes, mirror, real life people with complexities and problems. And they're all very flawed. And that has always fascinated me. And, I had worked with Michael Ellenberg on Luck at HBO and The Leftovers. And, he and I went to dinner, and he said, I have this great book, Top of the Morning, from Brian Stelter. And he said, Jen and Reese are interested. And I said, I'm interested. And, I've never signed on to anything without reading a script, but the world was very fascinating. And, it is really an exciting time working with Michael and Jen and Reese and Kristen Hahn and Lauren, and just creating the show together with Carrie.
What is that like working with, Jennifer Aniston and Reese Witherspoon? You have these two huge stars and they're like, yeah, we want to make a television show with you. That's just, it goes to speak about, what we've been talking about and just how the landscape of TV is changing. And what is that collaboration like for you?
Well, the collaboration with my partners is fascinating, and to work with a group of artists. And, Jen and Reese are real producers. They're executive producers. They're extremely smart and lovely. And it's been very synchronized. I direct both of them. I produce the show, boots on the ground. We have an extraordinary crew, and the entire cast is ridiculously great. And Reese and Jen contribute, to their characters, to the entire piece. We receive scripts, we get notes, as everybody does. And, they're real producers. They're, incredible actors. And it's just been a lot of fun and very hard during COVID. And, but we made it. And, we were shooting when, in 2020, we had shot 13 days and then we had to shut down and throw all the scripts away. And so we tackled the world that we were living in up to that point. And that was fascinating, really fascinating to explore.
How did that impact your shoot? Because I mean, the show takes place in New York, and then we have Steve Carell's character, the disgraced Mitch Kessler, in Italy. So how are you able to recreate that in the middle of all that's going on?
Yeah, well, we have an extraordinary production designer, Nelson Coates. And, we never left LA this season. We shot Italy down by Alvera Street, the Pico House, and did a lot of set extensions. We had a cobblestone street and, buildings, and were dressed, and then CGI took over and we put the lake in. We shot the Italian villa in Sierra Madre. And it completely dressed it. And then I had shot the entire villa with drones from every angle. And then we went and hired a drone unit in Italy, and we scouted locations there and peninsulas that we wanted our villa to be on. So I sent the drone unit, we found it, and then we shot all day and into the evening with our drone, this peninsula from every angle, and not knowing exactly how I would use the footage, but knowing that I had an idea as to how I would use the footage. And then we took our villa from Sierra Madre and placed it on the peninsula. And it was really, extraordinarily fascinating and difficult, but it was really exciting to be in that world. People said, "You were in Italy, what was it like?" And I said, no, we were in LA. And I think we pulled it off really well.
And you also weave in a lot of real-time elements. I love the dinner party in episode 2 when they're arguing over Trump's impeachment, and some people are like, "Oh, it's a sham," and these are conversations families are having, colleagues are having across America. How much of reality did you want to intertwine with the fictional side of the story that we're watching?
Well, that is always a challenge. It's a fictional universe we live in, but we're dealing with real life issues, Me Too, identity, race, sexuality. And so we deal with it very authentically. It's a character-driven show, and we dive deep into it. And, with I think great reality and authenticity, and that particular sequence was really challenging, and really fun. You have a big ensemble cast, and it's very intricate and it's very emotional, and you want to stay in there. And then we go into the screwball comedy in the hallway with the two women, which they are just brilliant at, and it was very enjoyable actually to shoot that stuff, even though it was that sequence, even though it was challenging. Everything is challenging with what we do. We create these worlds of these people that we fall in love with.
And another show on your resume is ER, one of the great hits of television history. So I'm curious if that was your idea to bring Julianna Margulies onto this season, or did that just all work out?
Well, we were, exploring, sexuality on our show, and identity, and we were, exploring how hard it is for women in power to understand who they really are. And one of one of that storyline is Reese's storyline and discovering what her sexuality is. And, we wanted to find a Diane Sawyer type and someone that was instantaneously recognizable. And Julianna had that instant recognizable factor, and she had the gravitas, and she's an incredible actor. And she said yes, and we were very grateful. It was really fun to work with her again after all those years, and how we've all changed and grown. And storytelling is always fun, and she was game.
And one of the other real life plots is COVID-19 sort of weaving in, and they're like, I think we should cover this as it's starting to break. I was curious, how much did that influence the story, and did you have to change your plans completely for season 2? Like, did you rewrite the whole thing, or how did that work?
Yes, the whole season was, we had a lot of scripts, probably, 6 or 7 when we started. And yes, we stopped and we regrouped because the world shut down. And in that time, we examined very carefully, what is the story we want to tell? We're a news show, a morning show, but a news show. And we wanted our world in our morning show world to reflect and mirror what was going on in the world. And, the reason we decided to take it up to where we did the lockdown was because that's where we were, and that's what we knew. And we felt we couldn't project any further. So yes, we threw all the scripts away, which was, oh my God, painful. And, but it was actually very exciting because we really had to look and take a really deep dive into where we were and where the world was and where our characters were and how it affected them. And, in many ways it opened them up, and we went into deep reflection mode as to who we are.
Well, it certainly all worked out, and congratulations on season 2. Congratulations on the PGA Awards nomination, and thanks for sitting down and speaking with me today about the morning show.
Thank you.
Welcome to Gold Derby. I'm Denton Davidson here with PGA Awards nominee Adele Romanski, executive producer of The Underground Railroad. And Adele, when I watched this film, or limited series, I went in completely blind because I'm someone who doesn't like trailers. I didn't want to know anything about it. So I was and I wasn't familiar with the book. So I was shocked to see that it was sort of this interweaving of fantasy and the shocking reality of American history. And I'm curious, when you were getting it off the ground and creating it, were you concerned about how audiences might react to this story on screen, and the fact that it's not like a historical fact-based series we might expect?
First of all, I love that you called it a film, because I think I feel like it's incredibly cinematic, and if you wanted to throw it up in a theater and watch it as a 10-hour film, you could. So I appreciate the faux pas. Yeah, as far as like, how is the audience going to receive this? We did a lot of like we had early conversations with focus groups about the novel in a few different American cities, and specifically focusing the conversation around Black television audiences and also white television audiences too, but like starting a dialogue early in terms of what people felt was sacred to the text and needed to be respected in the translation, and also perhaps where some of the imagery could be considered too sensational. And so I think that was a balance that we were always having to kind of find through the journey of the show. And it's interesting too that you kind of like reference the maybe less factual basis for it, and I assume that comes from the idea that like the way that Colton approached the material in the novel, there's this other fantastical, sort of
the fact that there's like an actual train.
Yeah, there's a train underground with like a steam train underground, which never has ever existed in any part of our history, and making the metaphor literal in that way. but I think, you know, Coulson at some point said he, in writing the novel, wouldn't necessarily stick to the facts, but he would stick to the truth.
Mm.
And I think that's something that Barry preserved in his adaptation and how he approached the material. And we too honored that in our approach to it. And I think it's all true, even if at times it's not all factual, I guess is what I would say about that.
That's a great way of putting it. The feelings are true and speak through. And it's, you know, what is a limited series availability done for you? Because you come from film, you've worked a lot in film, and you have this. I mean, now you've got something that you want to show over 10 hours, and a limited series really allows you to do that and dig into the characters and show their feelings and their truth. So what for you is have you enjoyed about creating a limited series in this way?
I mean, I think you just nailed it in your question. You know, it's an opportunity to go deeper into character, go into a longer story that maybe like there, I'm sure could have been a version, not by us, but by somebody else that was the 2-hour version of this book. We weren't interested in that. And we had to lose a lot even to get it to the 10 hours that it ultimately ran at. But just thinking about how much richer the lives of the characters were and the ability to go and spend time with, you know, not even the like the day player characters as we call them, but even like the background, like there are background characters in our show that were given like full complete lives and dimensionality. And I think I mean, also honestly, like there's resources there for us, you know, to tell stories in television that are starting to feel like they're shrinking a little bit in the feature side and the sort of prestige feature business. I think Mark kind of touched on that too when in your conversation, just the opportunity to tell a certain kind of story at a certain scale that, you know, feels a bit threatened as of late in the feature space.
And you've worked with Barry Jenkins often. He's a frequent collaborator of yours. He directed this as well as Moonlight, which you won Best Picture for. That's an Oscar night we'll never forget. I'm sure that's seared into your mind as well. But
and yet I also cannot remember it, but go on.
But I mean, how did that relationship with Barry form in the first place? And, you know, what do you like most about collaborating with him?
So Barry and I have known each other since college, which is now, you know, 20 years past. That's the beginning of the relationship. We made student films together. We went off our separate ways and started our careers, and then eventually came back together to make Moonlight. And now we have this company together, and it's myself, Barry, and Mark Sariak, who's another EP on the show, and also our partner at the company, and also a college classmate of ours. So it's a long history. I think that's one of the things I'm most grateful for is the family aspect, I suppose, of how we work together, and knowing that you sometimes struggle with family, but also ultimately you are family and you can never change that. And there's a really true love that exists. And then there's all the stuff about being chosen family, right? Like the respect and the admiration for that person's work and their craft and how they think, you know. So I think it's that very like sort of perfect blend of chosen family is how I would, yeah.
What for you was the biggest challenge of you know, getting this limited series off the ground? Because it does cover not so much time, but the location. It's beautiful outdoor landscapes. I'm curious, you know, how long the filming process took and where you filmed.
We filmed basically spanned an entire year. So it was a 116-day shoot, which across prep and across hiatus, it ended up being a year. We were sandwiched. We evacuated twice, on the front end for a hurricane and on the back end for a pandemic. And all in the state of Georgia, which the long duration of filming across that year actually ended up really proving advantageous in terms of maximizing across seasons. because I think the thing about the show that, you know, I don't know that it was very difficult. And sometimes you forget, like when you get excited about such an incredible piece of material like the novel, you have this Pulitzer Prize winning novel. It's an incredible piece of writing. Everybody is jazzed to go out and make it. And you kind of forget, like, oh, it's this wildly ambitious road movie, right? That travels like how many different states, and each episode is its own, for the most part, its own set of characters. Like we have Cora, the main protagonist, and Ridgway and Homer across the whole 10 episodes, well, more or less, but everybody else is a revolving cast of characters. Every episode is a new set, it's a new location. There's no like amortization, as we say in TV, across the show. So it was huge. And so I guess the greatest challenge was that meeting point of ambition and reality, and trying to figure out how to rein it in to meet the budget and meet the schedule. I think I stopped answering your question. What was the rest of what did I forget to answer that you just asked?
No, that was great. I also was so blown away by the cast.
Yeah.
You know, I'm curious how that process was to find a Tuso Mbito as Cora, Aaron Pierre as Caesar. One of my favorites, Chase Dillon as Homer. It's just, you know, finding this cast who aren't A-listers, but I mean, they might be shortly. They're well on their way. So what was that process like?
I personally love the casting process. I know Barry does as well. It's so rewarding to three-dimensionalize, you know, what was previously just, you know, words on a page. And we never know who they're going to be. I don't think there's ever, I certainly don't read it with cast in mind. And we worked with casting genius Francine Maisler, who also cast Succession, and works with McKay, and works with Bong Joon-ho, and is just incredible. And she was a real partner across that with us, and like truly searched the globe. You know, Tuso is from South Africa, so it was sort of far and wide. And I think Barry, to his credit, was of a mind that this role is anyone's. Really, truly, I'm not limiting it to locale or to experience or to recognition, name recognition. Like, come in and show me your Cora, and that's what Tuso did.
Well, it's a beautiful limited series. Adele, congratulations on the PGA Awards nomination for The Underground Railroad, and thank you so much for speaking with us today.
Thank you very much. Pleasure.
Welcome to Gold Derby. I'm Denton Davidson here with PGA Awards nominee John Hoffman, co-creator, executive producer, and writer for Only Murders in the Building. So John, you know, you're presented with an opportunity to work with Steve Martin and Martin Short, two legends of television comedy life. Can you talk about, you know, what was that feeling, first of all, and what were you thinking when this opportunity presented itself to you?
No question, I was intimidated. And just hearing you say that right now, I'm immediately intimidated. But it's been the most welcoming experience and supportive. The greatest part of this has been the support. And that started with Dan Fogelman, who is our great shepherd on this, producing wise, and Jess Rosenthal, his producing partner, who called me up one day, sat me down and said, we're looking for someone to showrun and co-create a show with Steve Martin based on an idea he has. And that was, you don't say no to that. and you immediately cross your fingers, dive in, and hope that they all like your ideas that you've brought to it. And that happened over a dinner with Steve and Dan and Jess. And again, just the spirit of, it's very rare when you've got producers who hear ideas and embrace them and make them better. And that has happened along the way on this one in such marked ways. That I feel humbled to be with this group, obviously. And then Steve and Marty, I think, you know, that history and that familiarity and those incredible talents are sort of embedded in me and my DNA from growing up and watching them, like most people. And if there was some sense of assurance that we could do this and I could sort of help shape the characters and shape the production, it was based a lot in what I knew about the kind of elevated comedy that they've both done for all of their careers. And that helped guide me in a lot of ways to sort of cross my fingers every time a script went in and said, does that sound like you? And does this seem like the territory of comedy we're talking about? Because there were big leaps we were taking with the show too. And again, just this very, very open-armed, we love it, let's go roll with that. It wasn't great resistance met on the creative side. It was the exact opposite.
And you've worked on Grace and Frankie as well with Jane Fonda and Lily Tomlin. So what is your connection with this generation of stars and makes you so passionate about wanting to make sure they continue to be represented on TV? Because you're proving that age is nothing, and these shows can be hits and they can be funny.
Yeah, well, first of all, I only will work with legends. That's now my thing. And I really genuinely, I can't believe it. You know, as you say, I hear my own life reflected when you tell me what I've been doing. And it's shocking to me. But I'll tell you, it's natural in some way too, because I just love the people that I've gotten the chance to work with in the last 10 years. Jane, Lily, Martin Sheen, Sam Waterston. That collection taught me so much about producing, about directing, about writing, about the way you work as professionals, just unbelievable professionals, all of them. And then to find myself in a next situation with the exact same kind of thing in just the spirit and, you know, the real appreciation, you know, that's what I love about the incredible thing of the obvious thing is the talent that's involved with the people I've gotten to work with, but the joy at watching at a time in their lives, something happen for them that's very unexpected to them and helping to introduce to an entire generation, people that the other half of the audience that we have know like in their bones. So that marriage of watching a generation awaken to these incredible talents over the last 10 years that I've had the opportunity to work with them. And also to hopefully show a new side, push forward, and just give work to the people who should be working. I mean, my Lord. And that's the thrill of you know, these opportunities that are now happening in streaming television. I want to do more of it.
And in terms of Only Murders in the Building, it's this genre. I mean, it's a comedy, but it's genre bending. It's a murder mystery. It's suspense. So what's the most difficult part about making sure all of those elements work together?
That was a real leap of faith and a real challenge. But it was born out of, I think, big discussions with Dan Fogelman and Jess Rosenthal and Steve Martin. And, you know, Steve's work certainly comedically over the years has taken leaps off of just normal comedies and reached for something a little bit higher. So when he came with this idea that was he was a real true crime aficionado. He loves mysteries. He's very much into them. And so I was like, okay, good. He knows this world, you know, really well. And the mix of how do you take these two guys plus Selena Gomez and imagine what that comedy pocket that they might find could be, and then land it in a very grounded and real and connected story about isolation and loneliness at a time in all of their lives where they might come together through a shared interest over these true crime stories and then be thrown into something like this. It just felt like an opportunity to make an idea that on paper might seem a little more expected leap off a little bit. And it really came from the talents of the people involved, and then hoping that, they might spark to those leaps we were taking with genre, with tone, and that it might all work in concert together. There was great faith with studio network producers across the board that I was amazed by, because that doesn't happen all the time. And you need real talent to look at it and go, yeah, that's the one. Let's do that.
And what did the experience on this specific project teach you that might be unique from experiences you've had in previous work? I mean, what will you take away from this process?
This has been, whereas you brought up Grace and Frankie, and I was really schooled by tremendous producers and Marta Kaufman and Howard Morris on that one. And also, as I say, the talent involved. This one is so singular in my own life. I just can't believe the feats that I watched everyone pull off during this time. As many of the producers have mentioned, all heroes and all brilliant work involved with everybody who's been speaking on this panel. And we all know personally that sort of feeling of, God, how do we do this in this time? How do we make this happen? And I've said it before, but I feel like that part of it is I'm so moved by the engagement of when we made this, how we made this, and the fact that people came out of their houses when not many people were doing that to come to work for good reason and hopefully make the world feel a little better if we could get it all done. So that part, I may be drifting away from the question, but I go on into that territory because I still feel that gratitude every day. I'm sitting on set right now and working with them all out here again, still in the middle of a bit of a mess.
Well, John, congratulations on the PGA Awards nomination.
Thank you.
The series Only Murders in the Building, and thanks for sitting down and chatting with us today.
Thank you so much, Denton. Appreciate it.
All right, thank you. Jen Statsky from Hacks, Bruce Miller from The Handmaid's Tale, Mark Roybel from Mare of Easttown, Mimi Leader from The Morning Show, Adele Romanski from The Underground Railroad, John Hoffman from Only Murders in the Building. All of you PGA Awards nominees this year, and I'm Denton Davidson for Gold Derby. And first of all, welcome to this roundtable of producers. It's fun to have people from all different genres, limited series, commas, dramas. It's all covered right here. And I just want to talk to you about, as a producer, we're in this awards season right now. What do awards mean? What can they mean for a television series, in terms of keeping it on the air sometimes? I mean, getting the visibility that you need. What have they meant to you, or have you had that experience in the past? I'll start with Jen.
Yeah, I mean, they are helpful, right? Like it helps, like you said, visibility. It helps get the show's name out there. And if you can say like, oh, it won these things and it nominated that way. So yeah, it's a huge advantage to have nominations that you can point to and hopefully wins. And yeah, so it's good, I guess, is the takeaway. That's the genius statement on awards. They're good, says Jen.
Thank God.
How about you, Bruce? Has it changed any trajectory for you in any shows that you've been a part of?
Oh, sure. I think, at the beginning of Handmaids, it was we got a TCA award, and I think that was the biggest thing in terms of putting us on people's radars. The critics had seen it so far before. So, I think the success of our show is a lot about, that part of the process. But nowadays, just making it is so hard, and I feel so proud of my other producers, what they were able to pull off. I mean, it was astonishing. The first few months, everybody here went through it. I think now I just appreciate the more, even more that, under these circumstances, people are doing such great work. So I think at least now they mean something to me. That I had, Adele's response, which is, I don't remember anything from the first year of the show. So I'm sure it was lovely, but it wasn't me.
Mark, how about you? What's been your experience?
Oh, we were like Underground Railroad. We came out last spring, so we were ahead of the Emmys, and so it's a little bit strange to be going through it now and talking about the guilds, which are after the Emmys, and so we're in a weird cycle. But for us to be recognized by the guilds, and it's great, but I think it's so it doesn't help us for like viewership or anything like that because we're already out. But I think for the nominees, it's great because it means a lot for the careers, right? I mean, they're getting recognition to be to be recognized by their peers, but it means a lot for them within the industry. And I know that it gets them attention. For amongst the studios and amongst their peers and people who are gets the recognition amongst people who are looking for jobs, and it just it's very validating. That's hugely significant, especially for the people who are I know in our crew who've been nominated for the first time, and that's huge. So that's been very rewarding for many of our nominees.
And Mimi, what's your experience been?
Well, it's been a long experience. And I would say that I've been on both ends of the receiving and not receiving. And I would say that awards are always welcome and very satisfying, and really in many ways validate what you are doing. And, the first season of Morning Show, we received, I think, 8 Emmy nominations. And this year, a lot of Guild nominations, and it's very rewarding. But I can also say that, when we were doing The Leftovers, it was one of the most life-changing experiences for me and for everybody, for all the actors, Damon Lindelof. It was an extraordinary time, and we worked really hard, and the critics loved us. They loved us, and it was really so wonderful and gratifying. And but no love, from the award community. And so it was really interesting how you balance that feeling, and I think the answer probably is really, we don't do it for awards. We do it because we love it, and we're a little crazy because we do it, and we work so hard, and it's painful, but it's also very, very satisfying, and I'm very grateful for all of it.
Adela, how about you?
I mean, I agree with what everyone is saying, and I guess I would just add to that when specific to us in a show like Underground Railroad, but also, Barry's body of work at large, I think when you're making work that perhaps challenges your audience in ways that they're not as excited to maybe sit down and be challenged, the being inside of the awards conversation means that you're in a conversation, right? And I think it's very noisy out there, like both in terms of film and television, and there's so much television, but also the film, and everything is sort of competing. Oh, and then also there's PlayStation, and also there's podcasts, and also like maybe you just want to take a hike, so to be able to just rise up in the conversation, and if awards are a way to do that, to get people to maybe have a second thought about sitting down and engaging with your show, and yeah, like Jen says, awards are good.
John, how about you?
Well, I mean, I agree with everything everyone's saying, of course, and it is tremendously humbling in this particular time because of the level of work that I watch all of the shows that are on this panel and feel like, yeah, they got it right. And there's probably 10 more that could be here as well, that, 20 more. It's quite a time creatively in television. So it's very humbling, and it's also relieving. Because there is the onus, I think, for any of us producers, sort of with the talents that are involved in our shows, we want them to do the thing that our shows are doing at this moment, which is, get the recognition for them. But it's rare air, as Mimi was saying, it can be you can make a great thing, and it doesn't get that for some reason. So to enjoy that and to live in that space is incredible. And again, just the other thing for a first season of a show like ours to get attention and to maybe allow an audience, like I come from the theater, and I remember them saying, like, back in the day, it was like, if, you know, there was, the standing ovations started after the New York Times rave. And so in that way, that's what happens here sometimes when things like this happen. So people get a bit of a pat on the back if they feel something's good, and then they learn of recognition that your show is getting. So it's invaluable that way.
And if there's, you know, young people aspiring maybe to be a producer or work in television or film, I always like asking, and I'm curious to know, what was your break in this industry in terms of becoming a producer? And, you know, was it a positive experience? Was it crazy? What was sort of your big break in the industry that led you to where you are today? And I'll start with Jen.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm sure I'm interested to hear everyone's different paths. Since I'm like a writer producer, I kind of came up through the traditional writer's room route. So my, weirdly enough, my break, I guess, if you want to call it, was I on Twitter. I was writing jokes on Twitter like a decade ago, and caught the attention of the head writer at the time at Late Night with Jimmy Fallon. And that was my first like writing, got hired off of that. And that was my first writing job. And then just transitioned into narrative when I started working for Mike Schur on Parks and Rec, and then just kind of started at the lowest level staff writer in a narrative TV room and worked my way up. And then as you do that in narrative, you become a producer inherently, your role becomes expanded. You go to set for your episode, you're on set and dealing with actors and crew and props and all that stuff. And so my path to producing was through that, being a writer, going to set for my episodes, kind of learning everything that way. And then eventually pitched Hacks and became, you know, EP of my own show. And so, yeah, that was my path.
Bruce, what about you?
As a producer, I think it was I got a job on ER, you know, after Mimi left, and so but I didn't know anything about producing, and I had producing in front of my name. And John Wells, who ran the show at that time, was such he would delegate for realsies. So he would give you a job to do as a producer, and that was your job. And that was the first time I'd been on other shows as a producer, and they just never give you anything to do. And not only did he give it to you, it was yours. And so that really was the beginning, I think, of understanding not just the job, but like what goes into making a decision. That when you get a decision, you have to talk to 65 other people. And so that was my first. So John Wells, really, I think I owe him a couple of years he certainly taught me more than I delivered for him. So I probably owe him a few years as a producer.
Mark, where did you get your start?
It's a pretty straightforward story. You know, I got my break actually. I wanted to get into the art business, and somebody said, "Don't get into the art business. You're not going to make any money there. Get into the movie business." And I didn't know anything about it, but I loved movies, and so I started interning for a producer and just kind of worked my way up, and stuck with it for a really long time, and just started learning the business that way, and then kind of moved around afterwards, and worked for a studio at one point, and then just wanted to get back to producing, and then left 20th Century Fox a couple of years ago to get back to producing. So it was just kind of a fairly linear path, but from apprenticeship to eventually, you know, getting back to producing. Fairly straightforward.
Mimi.
Well, you know, I've been directing for about a year, and I was hired to direct 2 episodes of a show called China Beach that John Sacred Young, William Broyles created, and John Wells had just come on as a producer. And I had worked with John Wells. We had many firsts together when he was a story editor, and I did my first television show and he wrote it. And so that's where we met. Anyway, I came onto the show. I directed the episode that John Wells had written. And then Sacred Young calls me into his office and says, "We want you to join the show." And I said, "As what?" I mean, this is China Beach. It's the late 80s. And, you know, I came up in the independent world. My father was an indie director. So I worked with him for many years in my 20s. And so anyway, I became a producer on that show, and it was really exciting, you know. Oh, I'm a producer, I'm a creative producer. And John Wells would say, and he, first of all, I was the second person to ever do this job of producing, directing. Greg Hoblet was the first on Hill Street Blues. And so, you know, I'm this creative producer, and John says, no, we're going to have producing meetings every week. And he taught me and Lydia Woodward and Carol Flint how to produce. And, you know, then
Twice
we
a
went
week.
on. Yes. And it was really, you know, the school of John Wells, where you learn how to run a show, how to budget it, how to do everything. And then on ER, you know, when I was directing, Spielberg's company was producing that show, and he came on set one day, and then we met, and he wanted me to come on to another TV show, a police show that he was doing. And, you know, we had an audience of 52 million people, and you know, and I said, like, you know, he called me and said, we'd love you to join, you know, our show and produce it. And I said, well, why would I leave ER to do another TV show? And then he called me and said, I'm calling you not to do some lousy little TV show, but, you know, to direct The Peacemaker, DreamWorks' first feature film. Anyway, those are the breaks.
Wow. And Adela.
I just gotta say, I have deep nostalgia for tuning in every week to watch ER. I really miss that, and I'm sad for this generation who's never gonna know what that was like.
I know.
For what was my break? I mean, honestly, I think, like, I've been thinking about it and listening to everybody's stories, and I think it's a series of mini breaks, like starting with being born to the parents I was born to, and the oldest of 5 children, and having the opportunity for the education I had, and like dropping out of theater school in college to go to film school, which then I met the people that I now work with. And then I made one little indie film, and it went well at festivals. It had some nice awards recognition, parlayed into like working with Barry again after so many years, and on and on and on. Like, it's just a cascading, sort of a cascading effect of, like, when things could go this way, they go this way, and then this way, and then this way. And it's kind of all of it, I think.
And John.
Yeah, I agree. I think we all could point to a very circuitous, and for myself at least, peculiar route to all of this. I have a very strange resume, and I've done a lot of different things, but secretly the sort of thing behind the scenes, in some ways, weirdly, is that I was a screenwriter for many, many years in Hollywood, and I was working for all of the studios with projects. I was learning a lot about writing, and also learning a lot about the projects that I was picking or being assigned to were the ones that were going to be the most difficult to get made. So a lot of them didn't, and it took me forever to come to television. But what the break that happened to get me there, I think, after being intimidated as a screenwriter, I'd been working alone so much, and I was intimidated by a writer's room because I didn't know how that might work. So the entree for me there was HBO, who I had developed many projects, again, difficult to make projects there. And they'd come to know me, and so I guess pictured me as more of a producer in certain ways because of that development experience. And they invited me to sort of join up on this show called Looking. And they had a young creator, Michael Lannon, who was wonderful, but hadn't had a lot of experience, and Andrew Haig, who's a brilliant independent film director, and a dear friend of mine now, but he had no television experience that way. So I was brought on as the experienced television guy, having not really done that. And so, but they were also very welcoming and created a very non-intimidating space. And so I directed a feature family film for MGM back in the day, and I had more set experience in certain ways in various forms, but that experience was the one where I immediately dove in and sort of found myself just producing because the other guys didn't know as much yet, and they quickly were learning. But it was trial by fire a little bit that way, but a great one.
Well, thanks to all of you for sitting down. It's been great to speak with all of you and hear all of your stories and discuss the great work you've done. Congratulations on the PGA Awards nominations once again.
Congrats.
I just want to say thanks to Jen Statsky from Hacks, Bruce Miller from The Handmaid's Tale, Mark Roybal from Mare of Easttown, Mimi Leader from The Morning Show, Adele Romanski from The Underground Railroad, and John Hoffman from Only Murders in the Building. And thanks again, guys. This was great.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
So nice.
Congratulations, everybody.
Yeah,
Yeah,
congrats to everyone.
Same here. Same here.
Congrats.
Take
Thanks.
care,
Yeah.
everyone.